You can do something there.
You come with your own special effects.
I have so many special effects, you know, like this and zzz. All right, guys, we're back. We're gonna talk knees again. I know, I love knees. Don't you love knees, Joey?
Okay.
I love knees, yeah. Knees are awesome. Now, remember, we just talked about Sophie Cunningham. She had her ACL tear. We've talked about ACL tears a lot. But here's something I want to go into a little bit. When it comes to the ACL, particularly in female athletes, we know that the risk is 6 to 10 times higher. Quoted number, on average, maybe 7 to 8 times higher. Risk of an ACL tear in female athletes. Higher than men. So there's something going on there. And do you think it's the shoes, Joey? It might be the shoes. Now, this is something that's presented a little bit in Europe. There's podiatry work in that area. I didn't even know this. That up until recently, and I didn't even know how common it is, but elite pro-level female soccer athletes have to wear and buy men's soccer cleats. I know. Do you believe that? That only recently have this realization about the differences in the anatomical considerations for women versus men. We've known that, but in soccer, women have to wear men's cleats. So there's a proposed theory that it's because of the non-gender sex specific shoe wear that has resulted in ACL tears. Now, I don't know. There's a lot of studies being done. There may be an association. Is it causally related? Biomechanical consideration? But there's a lot we don't understand. But that's like... Do you like that effect? Oh yeah, that was good. That was so good. There's a lot of theories behind how there's differences between men and women. There's gender, sex differences, genetic, environmental factors, various factors, and anatomic factors. Yes, women's bodies are anatomically distinct and specific and unique to women. So that means we need to study that in a very gender-specific, sex-specific, differential manner. We don't have all the data on that. Most studies focus on male volunteers, and certain demographics, so we don't have all the demographics out there. For example, soccer. The demographic diversity in soccer globally is much higher than if you look at certain other sports. Baseball, football, tennis. So there's a lot we don't know. And that's the beauty of learning, is there is so much we don't know, but then we have a lot of facts and opinions rolling out there about what people think or know. And yet, that is why I'm here. This is about education, to understand and reduce that gap of knowledge that's out there. And today, we're going to be talking about the ACL again, but in a unique manner. You can do something there.
You come with your own special effects.
I have so many special effects, you know, like this and zzz. So the women's ACL, higher risk. Now, when we look at the knee, we know that there are so many biomechanical considerations, but that's just the bone anatomy. Then we have to look at all the muscular, neuromuscular kinematics, the proprioception, the balance, lymphatic drainage, swelling, venous return, there's cryotherapy, there's a lot out there, hyperice. Like, people are affected in so many ways by the overall anatomical considerations, and yet most of the studies we look at are based on bone tissue that is cadaveric. Now, what's a cadaver? Cadaver is a person that has donated their tissue for science. And that should be respected and appreciated, because without that, we would not have the understanding we have today. However, if we look at the ACL from biomechanical studies, we say that a healthy ACL has a load to failure, meaning it'll snap on average, once you put how many pounds of force, how many newtons of force, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,200 to 3,000. So let's just say 2,500. So that many newtons, well, what's a newton? A newton, I need an apple. This is a special apple. So here's an apple. See how it just materialized? Here it is, there it is. Here it is, there it's gone, right? Okay, this is an apple my son did not eat. So 1 newton is about 1 apple. I know there's different sizes of apples, just stay with me. Okay, 1 newton is 1 apple. What's a pound? A pound is 4 apples. Can you make 4 apples appear?
I'll do it.
Okay, all right, so on average, it's about 4.5, 4.5, right? 4.5 newtons is a pound. So that means, let's just say 2,400 to make the math easier, because honestly, I was only in the top 10 percentile of math competitions in high school, so I need to dumb it down for myself right now, because I am old and my math is getting worse. So 2,400 pounds divided by 4 is equal to crickets, 600 pounds of force. 2,400 newtons is about 600 pounds, or maybe less, maybe 500. 4.5, you do the math, right? Doesn't matter. Somewhere around 500 or 600 pounds of force. And a lot of these studies are based on cadaveric tissue, mostly from older patients, most of whom were not athletes, because young, healthy adults, unless it's a traumatic injury, are not the ones that donate the tissue to science. And therefore, the tissue that's available, even if it's a healthy young adult, it's not necessarily a pro athlete in the majority. I would say greater than 99% of the biomechanical studies out there. And please feel free to comment on that, because I don't know everything. However, there is a siloed approach to biomechanical studies in the knee that we have right now. Most of it's biomechanical labs that you get about 2,600 force in a certain position to rip your ACL like this. But it doesn't usually tear from there. It usually tears from the femur or a mid-substance. But anyway, the point of the matter is that we think about 500 pounds of force is required to tear the ACL, and that's its maximum load to failure. But does that make sense? Like, what's the average weight of a linebacker?
Probably 230, 240.
More than that. It's got to be somewhere between 200 and 300, and maybe 250 pounds, right? Maybe it's more, Now, their weight, on average, we know that just lifting your leg is 2 to 3 times body weight. Jumping, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. Kicking, 5 to 10 pounds of body weight. So are you honestly telling me that a 300 pound, let's just say 200 pound, make the math even easier, 200 pound athlete with 5 to 10 times their body weight, who doesn't rupture their ACL 95% of the time, has an ACL that has an ultimate load to failure of only 500 pounds? Doesn't make sense, right? And why is that? Because our entire understanding comes from cadaveric tissue, and that's the importance of real-world kinematics. Now, obviously, let's pretend this is Ronaldo's knee. Calm down, Charles. It's an example, okay? Example. I'm not going to tear your knee again. That's why this is Ronaldo's knee. Ronaldo! Okay, I got to turn my back there. So anyway, no, never turn your back on anyone. Okay, so, well, you could, maybe. Anyway, so here's the thing. Let's just say we had Ronaldo's knee. And Ronaldo agreed to a live in vivo kinematic study that he allowed us to put a scope in, open it up, put little tensors all around his knee live, and then close it up, stitch it up, and have him go run and play a live soccer match. And then we would know the tension of that ACL while he's playing, but he's in pain. And he had surgery, and he's recovering. And there's no way that Ronaldo's gonna do that, right? Wait, did you hear that? Someone said yes. I don't think so. All right, so we have no in vivo kinematics of the knee with a live representation in real time, in real world, during a match of the ACL tearing. What does that mean? We know nothing about the ultimate load to failure of a pro athlete's ACL. It's not 2,600 newtons. I challenge every academic out there. It's not only 500 pounds of force. There is more force going through a live tissue. What is a living tissue? Living tissue has blood, nerves, vessels, tissue. It's living, not breathing. Well, technically, it's oxygen by diffusion. Some of it's within the capsule, some of it's outside the capsule, and it has a blood supply. Therefore, it is living and dynamically stronger than dead tissue. It also bleeds. If you strain it, it will heal. If you tear it, it is unlikely to heal. Why? Multiple reasons. We're not going to get into that because right now, here's the challenge. All of our information is based on dead tissue. Cadaveric tissue is tissue that is not living. It's fresh, maybe fresh frozen. Most of the fresh frozen samples go into into studies or in clinical trials, and a lot of fresh tissue. It's rare that you will ever see a study using fresh tissue because it's hard. Someone dies, their body is donated, you have to go through all the paperwork and everything, and then it has to get situated, and you can't just suddenly get it, and then you get multiple, like how many samples do you need? Do you need 20, 40, 50? How many people are dying under 20, under 30 that are pro athletes in the world, and you're gonna capture all that living human tissue and analyze it right away? So the data is mostly on patients that are not pro athletes, that are older, most of them older than 40, even young ones are under 50, maybe most of them are often over 65, 70. A lot of the earlier studies were done on older tissue. So then you have dead tissue that's being studied to give you a number of biomechanical constraints, and our entire science of innovation is based on cadaveric studies that are done on dead tissue. Doesn't make sense, right? I know. When you break it down, when you break down the science, you begin to understand that there are huge gaps of knowledge. We need to fill that. And that's what we're doing at Kinesi. I'm a co-founder of a Kinesi Smart Health product. And we're going to be getting live in vivo kinematics using advanced textiles with embedded sensors that will collect that data, and in fact, with newer ways of imaging inside the knee live, in vivo kinematics, to truly give you an understanding of what's happening. But right now, we're limited. We don't have the data. We can quote 2,600 pounds, we can quote 500 pounds, we can quote how many apples? 2,600 pounds, 1 pound is 4 apples, therefore 2,600 pounds or 2,600 newtons is 500 pounds. So how many apples is that? I'm not going to tell you. You figure it out, the math. You can pull up the research. It's there. Everything is out there to identify and find. And when you look at it with simple, basic scientific principles, you begin to understand that we need to fill this gap of knowledge because there is so much we don't understand. And we can't understand it unless we're measuring it in the real world, in real time, synchronized with biophysiology parametrics, all concurrently with live streaming of data so you can actually understand and analyze everything. And only then will you truly be able to understand what's happening inside the knee. Because right now our information is limited, and that's why we have so many tears. Because we don't fully understand what we're treating. We don't understand what we're treating because we haven't measured it well. And if you're not measuring fake knee, studies, dead tissue, even the live optical trackers, gait kinematics are done in a lab. We know there's a Hawthorne effect. Look it up. Hawthorne effect. The act of a participant changing their behavior when they're being observed, or they know they're being observed, or when there's an observer present. For example, I know there's a camera there, and I know Joey's there. So I'm acting ludicrous, right? While I'm explaining this. Is this how I explain to my kids? Well, actually I do. This is just me. What's that?
But there's an audience. You wouldn't be doing this if the camera wasn't here.
Well, that's true. Actually, that's true. I don't talk to myself in the mirror like this. It's all in my head. So, sorry, what was that?
Or random legs.
Or random legs. Yeah. Good Charles. So in the real world, if you're not being observed, or you minimize that burden of observation with high performance textiles that you can't even feel, they're like a second skin, and you're running around like it's within your natural workflow, you can truly understand the behavior of a knee in its natural environment. Simulated natural environments aren't the same. People create little test beds, homes, artificially created environments to enact certain things like measuring certain things. And sometimes you have no choice. Like there are some types of disorders and disease you need in a lab, you need in a simulated environment. However, the best data comes in the real world. For example, say I'm holding this apple and I miss it and I fall. But if I do this multiple times, that's pretty good, eh? So let's just say I'm holding an apple and my coffee and a newspaper and someone rings the doorbell. That's not going to happen in a lab or a simulated environment. And even if it is, you're going to be expecting it. So the unpredictably, you could say chaos theory, yes, please. Let's not get into physics. There's plenty of physicists out there. You can, chat down below. I didn't go to Caltech. So the unpredictably and the chaos theory basically says that, there is a tendency that there is unpredictably in the natural, unpredictable nature in the natural environment. For example, all of a sudden you get a pipe burst. Oh, you got to run and find out what's going on. Well, okay, sure, it's important to control the environments. You don't want to put other people at risk, but unloading a dishwasher, doing the coffee, doing the toast, running in the morning, getting my kids, running around, spilling something, dropping things, rushing out the door. And forget that, running in the mountains. Live streaming in the mountains in the middle of nowhere exists today. We're doing that. And you can capture all that information. And that's the whole point. It's the unpredictable nature of data and experiences in the natural real-world environment that make a difference, okay? Now, there's also the concept of dark data. Have you heard of this? Ooh, wow. So, a Dr. Kim, in a Korean medical journal, described dark data. I don't know if he was the first to describe it, but I read his paper, and the concept of dark data is essentially that when you do a controlled study, let's just say you get a clinical trial. Say you want to understand how bones heal. You have 2,000 patients in the study. You want to analyze whether a medication you take or an injectable will improve the fracture healing of patients in a certain population. Now, a controlled clinical trial means you take a set of patients that have certain inclusion and exclusion criteria. Are they healthy? Do they have a rheumatologic disorder? Excluded. Are they older than a certain age? Excluded. But are they of a certain age, certain demographics, and diversity to be included? But then they're not in the country that you're studying, so therefore certain diversity is not included. Certain demographics are not included. We understand that some patients are excluded. But then you take the actual clinical study, and then you say, oh, well, there was bias and certain exclusion based on the data, based on the actions of the patient or the investigator, or there was a mistake. And people have tried to understand that based on the treatment, the planned treatment, the treatment effect. or the intended treatment, which is called the intention to treat analysis. So even if someone was excluded within the study, or they crossed over, meaning they said, I don't like the injectable, I don't want any treatment, so they crossed over from the treated arm to the control untreated arm, or maybe some other treatment, there's an intention to treat analysis. However, let's just say you had to gather from screening 10,000 patients, come up with 3,000, and you can only publish on, say, 1,500 patients. Well, there's a lot of data that's unknown. Well, there's meaningful information within that, and that's the dark data. So let's avoid the dark data. Let's do real-world kinematics, understand what's happening in real live people without cutting them open and making them play as fast as they can. And that's what we need to do.